Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to Silverline's Wednesday Wham, the wonderful world of creative wisdom. Tonight, we are missing our Empress of the Inks, so we send our regards to Barbara Kelberg, who can't be with us tonight. We miss you, and we'll see you next time, hopefully. We do have a room full of creators tonight. All guys ready to talk about caricature and exageration.
Yeah, we're batching it tonight. All guys.
Oh, yeah, man. You never know where this is going to go.
No girls allowed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Before we get started, we're gonna thank our sponsor, Daytona Beach Comic Convention. We appreciate their sponsorship and support as always, and look forward to the upcoming con, possibly in September. That's usually when it is, and I hope to be there this year to hang with you guys. So I think it'd be fun.
It's a great
but without further ado, let us introduce everyone very briefly. Scott, get us started on your self-intro and then pass it along.
Hey, folks. Scott Wakefield, writer and co-creator of Steam Patriots. And that's me. I'm going to go, how about we go around the horn? Rob.
Oh, well, I'm Rob Davis. I'm the penciler, inker on Silverline's Twilight Grim. What people will probably know me best as the artist on Star Trek Deep Space Nine back in the 1990s. I did some work. Also did some work for DC's Star Trek books as well, but that's probably my greatest claim to fame to date.
And I'll keep going. Rory.
Hi, I'm Rory Boyle, co-creator of Steam Patriots, along with the illustrious Scott Wakefield.
Excellent. And Aaron.
I am the artist on Fire Rush, and which is still, I don't think it's done yet. And then the upcoming Obsoletes, and then I do my own comic Goblins.
Cool.
And I am Dean Zachary, writer-creator of Silverline's Silver Blade, coming at the end of the year. And you may know me also from other things from back in the 90s, but primarily in recent years, Cat and Mouse #1. So without further
Don't
ado...
listen, he lies.
Yes, Aaron's in prime form tonight, folks. I'm just going to warn you. He's out there. He's the spoiler. He's the heckler.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So,
We always need one.
we always need a heckler, though.
Yeah.
It keeps us on our toes. So, okay, I'm going to just set the stage here. We want to talk about exaggeration and caricature. Most of you probably are thinking about it in terms of the artist, and I like to use an example that you probably are familiar with. Todd McFarlane made great use of caricature in his best-selling Spider-Man of 1990, which was so successful that he decided that it was the artist that sold the book, Mr. Marvel editor, and not just the name on the title. So he started Spawn and proved that was correct. And his art is kind of, yeah, legendary in terms of its cartoonishness, but still its appeal. People have this idea of art being on a spectrum, and I guess it's an easy way to discuss it academically, where you go from extreme cartoon all the way to photorealism. And most comic book art falls somewhere on that spectrum, somewhere in the middle, maybe leaning a little to one side or the other. Aaron, I want to start with you because when it comes to caricature in art and exaggeration, I think of all the artists here, you're probably the king of that realm.
Doing it.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about why, what influenced your style, why you choose that style, and why you find it so much fun to work in that style, and would encourage others to not be afraid to depart the realism approach.
What did I start getting into it? The original Ninja Turtles, the Ace Man and Laird stuff is very stylistic. Arthur Adams, I just gravitated towards stuff that exaggerated proportions or whatever. Realism didn't do much for me. I remember when, what was it? The guy who did Marvels or whatever.
Alex Ross?
Ross.
Yeah.
Everyone just loved him, and I just didn't do anything for me. I just think I lean towards more graphic design, so geometric shapes, stuff of that nature. That's manga. Manga is pretty stylized, but I don't know. Realism, I felt like sometimes artists who did realistic stuff, super realistic, were more focused on making sure it looked real than drawing what needed to be for the story. In other words, emotions and stuff.
Right.
And I feel like sometimes if you exaggerate it or whatever, you can start bringing in elements of design and other things into it that don't break it. You guys know who Larry Stroman, and he does. Larry Stroman's a very characterized artist.
Oh yeah.
But he would bring in graphic design elements or whatever. And so if you did that with like an Alex Ross, a graphic design, it would just look weird. It would be a juxtaposition. But his stylized art worked with that. So I think stylizing your art and moving away from realism can open you up to more storytelling ideas. I think it just depends on the story. I mean, some stories, require realistic art. But and some characters do, maybe, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always gravitated to more. I like Mark Silverstreet's early stuff. He's gotten tighter, but his looser stuff, more his gestural stuff, was stuff that I really. Sorry, I have a cat. they like to fight. So when they get together,
they also like to. If you're doing something
attack
not paying
computers,
attention, they will try and get the attention.
Yes, they will. Yeah. Tommy,
yeah.
Tommy, the inker who never sleeps says again,
hi, Tommy.
great to see everyone.
Yeah.
Hi, Tommy. Shout out.
Miss
Hope all's
you.
going well. It is going well. We miss you. Wish you were here talking to us.
Yep.
Aaron, so when you work in that style, is it the freedom to kind of do whatever you want? You feel like you're not limited. You can communicate better that
Yeah.
way? Is that okay?
I think I can exaggerate, and also I get to play with the more design of the characters, like silhouettes and stuff.
Yeah.
You get the I don't know. I find it visually more appealing. Like I said, I don't mind realistic stuff.
Mhm.
But it never excited me because I
I
felt
hope
like
not.
yeah. It was okay. I don't know. I mean, it was like I was always into I got into Joe Mad when he did like Battle Chasers and stuff.
Right.
That sort of exaggeration. And I grew up with like Saturday morning cartoons where it was always cartoony or whatever. I always gravitated towards that side. This is why I never work in the superhero comic book genre, because my style doesn't fit that at all.
Right. But
So-
that's
Well,
totally cool. I mean, there's room
Yeah.
for I always say, the water's warm. There's room for everybody.
Yeah.
Even Scott Wakefield. I mean, we even let Scott into the water.
It's
So
very, very kind of you. You haven't muted me already?
No, not at all. In fact, I
Not
wanted
yet.
you to sort of throw in with the writers a little bit and talk a little bit about what exaggeration and caricature means in terms of writing. And you can reference literary, you can reference comic writers, whatever you want. Go for it.
Can I continue on Aaron's as style talk about
Sure.
the visual side? When Rory and I were looking for an artist for Steam Patriots, one of the we of course we wanted it to look realistic. We got people. It's not there's no anthropomorphic animals or superheroes. But we wanted a lot of energy. We wanted a realism, but also to have a comic book energy. So to add,
Yes.
and if you look at our first issue, we got we've got that. And it's not over the top, because sometimes you can get the mouths get real big or the hands get real big, and that's fine for a style. But I think when you're trying to be in a real world, which we are, we wanted it to be realistic, but we wanted a lot of energy. So there are some exaggerated gestures and exaggerated expressions, because I think Aaron, like I agree with you on some of it. If you stick with realism, you can lose some of the energy that you would want in like a comic book world, where you want it to be a little bigger than life. But then, Dean, you were saying it fits wherever you fit. You're gonna have an audience for that, hopefully. But then on the realism spectrum, I absolutely loved Adi Granov's Iron Man stuff from the Extremis. Love it. But it fits. It was perfect. And then I love a traditional. Oh gosh, I'm showing my ignorance here. What's the comic book? The art, the dots,
we talked about that.
You're talking about the four color process.
Yeah, the original. Oh, what's that called?
Same
Oh my
YK.
gosh. Yeah, but there's a word for it. I'm feeling
Dot pattern?
Yeah, the dot pattern, but there's a
The
I'll come back.
Moray pattern?
maybe.
Moray pattern?
But old comic books, primary colors and just simple
Oh, yes.
comic book art. That's what comic book art is awesome. And I love it. But I did always love how, I know I always beat the Iron Man drum, but Iron Man's armor, his face, his eyes would go like this or on his helmet. And because you'd have to exaggerate his pointillism. Yes, that's not the word I'm going for. Because that's different
and
than...
Fan said that too. Yeah. We're going... Four color
original
process is what we had to do, and then we had to create shading with that dot pattern, which I think I know
Moray pattern.
Yeah, maybe
I know what you're talking about. It's the one that what's his name, the very famous artist used. Andy Warhol would use that a lot in his stuff.
Okay. So I feel like for me, my personal preference.
Zipatone. Tommy comes through with Zipatone.
Okay.
Or dual shade.
Or isn't there a
which unfortunately doesn't exist.
Is doctrification? Yeah, that's the one I was thinking.
Yeah, that's right on the tip of our tongue there. And awesome.
I like in the broader scope of art, like I gravitate towards Winslow Homer and I got poo brain tonight.
Howard Pyle,
Norman
N.C.
Rockwell,
Wyeth, Norman Rockwell,
N.C. Wyeth, yeah,
and then
illustrators,
and I'm not going to have their names here, but that early, or sorry, kind of I think of a late romantic, right up through the 20s, like Norman Rockwell, all of those styles of all the book covers from the late 1800s and 20s, were that kind of romantic style. I like that. So where there's not a lot of shading, it's a lot of muted tones, all those, like the Boy's Life cover.
He's another one. Yeah.
I love that style. So I gravitate towards that, but I think when you're talking of course, when you're talking cartoons and Ninja Turtles and stuff, you've got all those faces and the exaggerated everything, which is awesome. But in the word world, going over the top with hyperbole has its place. And
I can't use that one now.
Hyperbole. The Hyperbole is coming up right in February, right? I think maybe the Bills are going to be playing somebody in the Hyperbole.
Maybe.
So that
now we got to pay the NFL money.
Crap! Darn it! I can't say that word.
You can't even say that word.
The big game.
Superb.
The
owl.
big game. I'll say it. Super Bowl. Sue me.
Hyperbole has its place. Now the Romantic era writers, of course, in recent history, that's where all the flowery or purple prose comes out, and I tend to think it's tedious. Anyone try to read House of the Seven Gables or Scarlet Letter, something like when the exposition, the opening of the book is just prose and description. I know there was different times in the 19th century and people had time to read, and I have more time to read and enjoy it. I can't get through it sometimes. But
I think it more had to do with they were paid by the word.
Yeah. Just throw in every adjective and adverb you can, and it gets tedious. But
open a door,
right? But Shakespeare has it's poetry. It's all poetry. It's all the flowery words and rhymes, and just like with the visual art, I think it has its place. And I'll reference Teen Patriots again. We are writing a story that takes place in the late 1700s, and they use some bigger words or some what we would think kind of clunky now, and we try to put that in. We don't want it to sound forced or fake. We also don't want it to sound anachronistic, where they're saying "Hey, dude," and stuff like that. But we want to have a good mix of it. And in the comic book world, we are limited by page space and panel sizes to how many words we can put in. But the occasional big word. Or the occasional little bit of a poetry lilt to it is helpful, and I think knowing those, knowing and reading some of that poetry, and reading some of the romantic style, some of it's really beautiful and it has a place, and you can say so much more with a little bit of a flowery line thrown in. As long as it's not heavy-handed and just tedious to get through. So I say it all comes back to, of course, we always say know the rules before you can break them, and have that base of words and the visual art, and then go from there. And so you're not just slathering on just the sugary blech, but you're just sprinkling it in as a spice.
You bring up the subject really of time, place, the appropriate nature of what the story you're telling, the setting, and so on. But also personal taste does play a role. So that it's a blend of personal taste and the needs of the story. Do you think that? Well, let me ask it this way: do you think you win over people who may be in the other camp when you try to do what's popular, or when you follow your instincts?
So you always have to write for your audience, and having a vague, I'm writing for men age 18 to 107. And you gotta, so many successful artists say, pick one person, I'm going to write this story for Rory, because I know there's hopefully hundreds of thousands of Rorys out there, but I'm writing that helps me dial it in. Rory's going to like
Oh
this.
God, now you're scaring me.
Rory, I'm sorry. I know you are
He's
one of a
multiple
kind,
man.
but so I would write this for a person. They say pick a person and have that person sitting across, not literally, but imagine that person's across the table from you, and write for that person so that person understands, and that's your audience. So you're not writing for this amorphous, nebulous idea.
But the problem is, they're always going to be disappointed looking at you.
Yeah, I know. If I'm writing for Rory, he's just going to roll his eyes the whole time. Just, I'll get on with it.
This could be better.
No, as long. So, Dean, I'm not answering your question. Is as long as it's to say if it's good. I know that's dumb to say if it's good, but if you write, okay, I really like the Master and Commander series. That was written in the 1970s by Patrick O'Brien, but he wrote it as if it's the 1800s. It's 1803, and it's a slow book. If you read the Horatio Hornblower series, it's a lot of action. Reads more like an action. There's always stuff happening. The Aubrey Maturin Master and Commander stories. It'll take pages for them to leave port. It'll take pages for them to hoist the mast. And I keep my phone next to me, so I look up. What the heck are they talking about? These words, or where are they? What's going on? But I love it, and of course, those are you could say they're kind of clunky and slow, and there's a lot of Victorian like sitting and talking about clothing and food and love interests that take forever for anything to happen. But it's written really well, and you've got characters that you're in love with. So I think you write a good story and you've got those characters, and as long as it's not too out of the realm of readability for a modern audience, you're gonna succeed.
Well, that's a good point. I believe that if you respond to it, if you connect to it, and your enthusiasm for that connection spills over into the work, that is something people can attach to. I've seen art styles on a cover and then open the book after sort of not being interested in the art style, and then the story's so good that I keep reading it, regardless. So that you can win people over with that genuine power. We're talking about that power, that magnetic power of enthusiasm with art. Talk to us a little about that. Rory, what about you? Like, what connects you to a specific writing style, and how do you implement that when you write for comic books, for example?
Oh, boy. I think a lot of the style, like you said, you're writing for an audience. Finding the canter, the rhythm, and the pace of what you're writing can really can carry you far. And like what Scott was saying about peppering in those period vocabulary words can not only enhance the experience, it keeps the person in the story when used correctly. Because if you use it too much or too little, they'll be like, "What the heck is that? That came out of nowhere." But,
right.
I kind of liken the text or what you're writing is musical. It has a musical flow to it of some sort.
Every sentence should have
a cadence.
It doesn't have to be poetic,
right?
But it has to flow and pull the reader through.
Yeah,
it's artwork works. Artwork works the same way, but it's almost musical in how it has to work.
Yes,
and when you frame an image, you've got to have a layout that if it's a layout that's going to draw your eye linear, or if you want just like you have a staccato of words, short and punchy, quick.
See,
or if
we're
you
already talking musically,
slow
staccato.
Things.
Beats. There are beats in a story, and the art has to match those beats in the story.
Yep. And
Infrafan says, I'd be happier with artistic individuality over fitting in with trends. I feel like you risk missing a great story when all the covers on the rack look like McFarlane or Lee. That's a good point. I agree. Artistic individuality, and that's what we're exploring tonight. We're trying to sort of illuminate what that means to us and maybe get some feedback for those listening, what it means to them. To me, it means a genuine enthusiasm which infuses the imagery with power that connects with the viewer. So, for example, I don't know if you guys know this, but you could look it up very quickly on the internet if you don't. Rob, you'll know who I'm talking about here, and possibly Aaron too. Frazetta, most people know. There was a contemporary of Frazetta named Boris Vallejo, right?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Now, they were both
Yeah.
they were both in that same vein of exaggerated Conan the Barbarian style fantasy art, very powerful imagery, mostly nude men and women, or close to nude men and women in
Darn
life
close,
or death struggles with monsters and all of that. And it was beautiful because it was its own world, and it was a very, very trendy style from about mid 60s to the mid 80s, and maybe a little beyond that. But at any rate, Boris Vallejo was one of these people. Was a very accomplished artist. This is nothing against Boris, but he would use models. He himself and his wife were in excellent shape. They were athletic. They were models. They often used themselves or hired professional models to pose. They took photographs and rendered these almost perfect paintings of these individuals in their costumes, and the costumes, of course, would be slightly exaggerated to fit the art needs and so on. Where with Frazetta, almost all of his work was out of his imagination. He would get inspired by an image and maybe have a model or two, but ultimately what you saw was what was in his mind. And I always used those as foils and if you bring up those images, you'll see what I'm talking about. The more imaginative approach was always more powerful for me. It connected with me because one demonstrated a draftsmanship skill. The other demonstrated the ability to transfer emotional power onto the canvas.
Yeah.
And I think it's undeniable that Frazetta is a legend because of that. Not because so much of the content was part of it, but I think more powerful was the imagery itself had a raw emotion to it. And that raw emotion was in the brushstrokes, it was in the color choices, it was in the composition. And that's what I always tried to emulate in my art. When I would come down to the final piece, I would always say, look, is this powerful? And I've done pages multiple times, and my wife will go, you've already drawn that page. And I go, yeah, but it sucks, right? It's not, I mean, it's there. No, it looks great.
Oh,
no,
sure. When she tells you it sucks, you believe it. When I tell you.
No. I always go, look, this is just, it's appropriate. It's serviceable. It tells the story, but I'm not feeling it. It's not reaching out and just grabbing me by the collar, and she'll go, but that's just you being a perfectionist. Just you're never going to get this done, which she's right. But it's like, I have to redo it until I'm pleased with it. So that's part of the process for me. I don't know if any of you other artists, Rob, you can speak to this, I'm sure. When do you feel like it's done? Is it the draftsmanship? Is it the power? Is it a combination of both? Is it just good old-fashioned deadline? I got to get this done and get paid for it. How do you approach this?
Yeah, I have been accused of working too fast.
Okay.
I mean, I had an artist friend who says, but I took hours on this piece, and you just did yours in 10 minutes. And I'm going, who beats the deadline?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jack Kirby had a saying that just good enough. I mean, you have to, when you're in a deadline oriented thing, publication or whatever you're in that's got a deadline on it, you have to teach yourself to say, okay, that's good enough. It's not what's in here. It's not 100% of what I wanted, but it's close enough that I can move on to the next thing. And that's where I go. I've actually had because I'm sitting here doing thumbnails for a book that I'm working on now, which it
Okay.
makes me think in that vein. In that, I also do spot illustrations for the Airship 27 stuff that I do. Well, I also do thumbnails, still the real small stuff. Well, I did one time for a story. The thumbnail, I nailed it in the thumbnail. Now, I don't put it on a light board or anything. I try to transfer it because I make changes in it when I get it on the final size, which is much bigger, 6x9. And I did this one, and I could not get it in the bigger size. So I finally scanned it into the computer, blew it up to that size, put it on the light table, and then I had it.
Yeah.
A lot of times the gesture drawings that you're doing when you're doing a thumbnail are much more powerful, or it has the right motion, everything is right a lot of times than trying to find a photograph, put that on your light table and try and trace that, which I also do sometimes for some of the stuff that I do. But making sure that it has the right oomph to it, it's got the right emotional impact, or it depicts the scene emotionally properly. Then I'm and if I get close to what's in here, then I'm satisfied and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
You've got, when you're in a deadline oriented thing, you have to think that way. You have to go, okay, it's not perfect, but it's good enough. You have
So
to
that's
learn how to
what
do good enough.
that's what I've been doing wrong all these years. So
I
narrowed it down.
I like your work. I like what you're doing, but I looked at people like Kurt Swan and Don Heck, and even those folks who were they some people call them hacks because they were knocking pages out. But when you needed when you needed a book done, someone else had screwed up their deadline, and you needed the book done in a short period of time, who did you go to? You went to the guy that knew how to do just enough to get it done.
So I also
that's the people I was emulating.
Yes,
I draw the
I
best
always
stick figures in the business.
I always admired John Buscema and Romita Sr., but also Gil Kane, because that was part of that Marvel House style of the early 70s with Spider-Man specifically. But the fact that it looked good all the time and they got it done on time, and I always admired that. The good news about what we're doing now with Silverline, and what a lot of the aspiring creators listening and watching have the opportunity to do these days, is we tend to have gotten away from the monthly grind, and we're back to this graphic novel. It's sort of like our deadline situation is a little different now in terms of we've got to get it done, but not necessarily the way it used to be when we were working for the big two. So we've got a little bit of an advantage, here.
You could put a little more into it.
A little more into it. What I like to tell people is be true to yourself. If it gets the point across and it took you 15 minutes, awesome. If it took you an hour and a half to get that panel done to get the point across, then you were true to yourself. I mean, you're not gonna get much sleep, and you might get in trouble with your editor. But be true to yourself. I mean, get that done. And I was gonna ask you, as far as editors in your head, I always had an editor in my head, and the editor in my head was always like, "That's not accurate." Okay, and what I learned to do was get into that wrestling match with the editor and say, but does it look cool? Right. So that's why I brought in McFarlane. There is nothing realistic about Spawn's costume, right? It's impossible. It's chains flowing around it, 25-foot cape and spikes so big he couldn't turn his head, he couldn't move, he couldn't fight in real life. It's ridiculous, but it looks cool. So whenever I hear that editor in my head going, "Oh man, that's just not the way that looks in real life," and then I always answer it and go, "But it looks cooler."
Case in point,
real life.
this looks cool.
Yes.
We don't know what's going on. We have no idea what's
No,
going
no
on. we have an idea. Will it work? Probably not.
Right, exactly.
It looks cool.
Exactly. It looks cool. And I think, I don't know, what about in writing, guys? Speak to that. Scott, like, is there a looks cool phrase in writing that's a counterpart to that? Sounds cool, or is it powerful? You know, does it communicate?
I think a lot of it falls into, so from the comic book world, the dialogue can get a little goofy, and it's gotten away from that. I mean, read old comics, and sometimes they're hilarious. You know, the villain exposition, or the dialogue, and the haha, I have you now. And,
I have you now. The twirly mustache.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that it fits, and so sometimes also the external monologue or what they say, it sometimes I try to avoid it, but sometimes you got to tell the story. Someone's got to say a thing at the right time. And in the real world, you'd be like, wait a minute. He just walked around the corner and heard him say he's going to blow up the whatever, at the time. So, okay. But in the, I'm sorry. So, if I don't get a villain monologue, I'm disappointed. Yeah, you gotta have that monologue.
You have to. You don't understand what you're up against, Mr. Bond. Yeah.
No, I expect you to die.
Yeah.
No, Mr. Bond, I want you to die.
You gotta have it. You gotta have it. And so in the long form, in the novel world, throwing in a metaphor or something like that, or hyperbole, or an always and a never, and it works to drive the point home, to make your point. In the dialogue world, we don't talk like that. And I think that's where it's a little more jarring. If someone's talking all flowery, and with these and thous and so forth, talking all King James, it gets a little clunky. But in the comic book world, you've got to have people saying some stuff too. That's again,
you gotta have people
that wouldn't be saying that in the real world.
Yes, you gotta have some Dr. Doom dialogue where Doom will not allow this. Referring to yourself in the third person and all. There's a coolness to it.
Yeah.
So again, it gets back to is it cool or not? Aaron, what about you, man? I mean, like, you're like the most like, hey, if I like it, I don't care. I like it. So.
Yeah. I the thing is, I was going to say, if you want to heal yourself from being obsessed about your art, Dean, watch somebody read your comic. Sit and watch and read it. If you ever watch somebody read any of the work you've done, seriously, the reason I asked this,
not completely, like a few pages, here and there, like at a con, somebody will. But
give a stranger whatever,
not like
read
the whole comic.
The reason I tell you to do this is because you see how fast they read it and how little they pay attention to stuff you think's important. They don't care about.
Yeah.
I mean, when you work on years on a book, because I've worked years on a book and given it somebody's clocked it in 10 minutes. That was okay.
And you're like, don't.
Yeah. Like all this stuff I took all this time, like struggling about. Yeah, it doesn't.
It's for me, it's jarring. It's jarring if the art. Actually, it's just either their proportions are way off, a person looks weird, or like they're not. The person is doing a thing that's physically impossible. I think when it goes beyond, I'm not talking like an action hero kind of thing. I'm talking like a knee bending the wrong way, or that's what breaks me out of it. If it's stylized and over the top, fine. But if it's somebody.
I think we're talking consistency.
People don't read sound effects.
Consistency.
Yes.
Do you really think sound effects are going to slow it down? You know what? I'm gonna make an entire comic of nothing but sound effects and have to see if Roller can figure out what's going on. No pictures, just sound effects, and let's see if Roller. It's gonna take him forever to read it.
Are you anti sound effects, Aaron?
Yeah, I don't do them.
Oh, I didn't know
you
that.
Don't do sound effects.
I guess I never. Wow.
Oh, interesting.
I like your idea on all sound effects, just no dialogue.
And all time.
That would be amazing.
Try to do all right. Doing now, I don't do them. I might do them later for something, but right now I don't do them in it now. So my friend Juan doesn't do them either.
There's the I gotta always throw in my Simpsons reference when they're doing the Radioactive Man episode, and he thinks back to with the Scoutmaster, and it's Pow, Biff, Zoink, Mint. Don't be afraid to use those claws.
I don't know. I just never do. So
Infrafan says, I can't remember who wrote it, but there was a poem about your art fills a hole in a person with the exact same shape. Wow, heartwarming indeed. That's I haven't heard that, but that's pretty awesome. And also,
somebody with a hole in them, that would be kind of
what does
kind of hot.
What does a Wilhelm scream look like?
I mean, what is it? Yeah, that's always good. And then Roland says, seriously though, words will slow the reader down. That's. So basically, you're saying, Aaron,
skill. Now I will. I will push back on that a little bit. Yes, it will slow them down to do it. I'll give Roland that. But I have a friend who can clock like a book or 2 books a day. That's all words.
Like book.
She's clocking through them. Books. Boom.
What are you talking about? Like 300, 400 page novels? Have you quizzed her on the content? Because I have a friend who brags about doing that, and I'm like, so what happened when such and such is, and they're like, oh, I don't know, I was kind of not paying much attention.
They kind of go through it, but like I give her like comic books, and she's like done. Doesn't matter how many words it is, she's done. So
wow, just print blank comics, record reading. So does art. Wow, we're all kind of crazy stuff. Scott, I did look up the 4-color printing process.
Thank you.
And it was called screen printing. That's what you're referring to. Screen.
Yeah. What's the Ben Day process?
That's like
a
sore shoulder. You rub that ointment on there. It's Ben Day.
You run the Ben Day on there, and man, that arm just quits hurting right off. Roland says, "Yeah, my mom can read 2 novels a day too, but that is not the normal reader."
Yeah,
see,
no,
that's true. That's not the normal reader. Are you saying your mom not normal, Roland? Yeah, that's not nice. I've met your mom. She's a sweetheart. But that being said, it really is something that's a personal thing. I look at it like this, Aaron. This stuff is printed forever. So I want it to be the best stuff I've ever done. I want every page from here on out to be better than the page before. So that's what slows me down, and I'll always do that. That's just me. I'll always fiddle with it, noodle with it.
Satisfied with it or whatever, but I mean, not everyone likes my stuff. I mean, it's stylized, so I don't know. I kind of take it as like the whole thing works together when you're writing it and reading it, whatever. You can have a movie with the greatest visual effects in the world, but if the story sucks, no one cares.
Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow.
Hey, I like that one. It is horrible, but I like it.
Oh my God! Get through that movie. I could not get through that movie. It was beautiful, but it was dead. It just
you guys. That's interesting. That is. Yes, I agree with you guys. That was a beautiful moving picture, but there's no memory to it. Nothing to it.
Horrible.
Nothing to it. Roland says, "Yeah, but she's a super fast reader. I didn't inherit that. I didn't inherit any fast reading skills
I'm a slow reader. I'm
very slow reader.
My wife goes through books. She'll reread books. I think I've reread maybe 2 or 3 books in my entire life.
Roland's a slow reader. That's why I blow my words up, my panel words up.
Man. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, the insult comedian, Aaron Humphrey. He's here all week, kids. Tip your bartenders on the way out.
He's going to actually write a story for me now, and then it's going to be all sound effects. And he's going to make it as weird as possible.
Yeah, of course he is.
I've actually posted that quote on my Facebook page. That's absolutely... He has said that, absolutely.
Alex Toth's one? Yeah.
Yeah. To reduce everything down to their basics and draw the hell out of that. Same would apply for writing. Yeah, I can relate to that. That's good advice. Roland says, ouch. Oh, ladies and gentlemen.
The one point I want to make about your art, Dean, and you're talking about doing the perfection thing. There's a couple of things I want to cover here is the fact that Yeah, people read it really quick the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then the second time they'll read it more than once. That's the thing about comics is you read and reread and reread. That's why they get worn out. At least they did when I was a kid. I wore the heck out of them because I reread them. So the second time through, that's when they start seeing all the little stuff that you're putting in, and then they notice. It's that first time through that they go, they just get through to get the story done. They go, oh, that was a pretty cool story. I'm going to read that again. And then when they read it again, they catch the other stuff. They start seeing all this little
and then they start realizing, man, this comic sucks.
This guy has no idea what he's doing.
So
look at it.
What I do to speed up that process, I want to put that stuff in. But what I'll do is I'll put that in the establishing panel. When you start a new scene, that's when I put in all the detail. I just load up on the detail on that one. It's because I'm setting up where everything is so that later on when it shows up, oh wow, I'm gonna go, yeah, he had it in there. So and that's how you do it. Then you don't. After you've done the establishing panel, then you can kind of leave out some of the background details and let the exposition drag you along until you get to the next point where you have to put a bunch of details in.
Your brain fills in the details.
Yeah, and I'm no professional. I'm no veteran of the art. But yes, thank you. But Rob, what you're saying is the mark of someone who knows their craft. And everything we all keep coming back to, like, all of this is good or all of this is bad. Knowing when to apply it is so. If you want a very bleak or very basic image, it's going to have to fit the words or no words or sound effects or no sound effects to know to bring the reader along. In the comic books world, I was going to say the other end of the spectrum, if we're talking whatever reverse hyperbole is, Cormac McCarthy, I could not get through No Country for Old Men. I got a couple pages in. He writes so trimmed down with no dialogue tags, nothing. I couldn't read it. Unreadable for me.
But The Road,
The Road, I have read. That's one of my books. I've read it 4 or 5 times. I love The Road. Now, The Road is meant to be bleak, empty, devoid of flowers, devoid of color. It is a horrible world. And there are pages where the dad and the boy are talking, and the dad says, "You okay? Uh-huh. You sure? Yep. Really? Uh-huh. Really? Yes.
Shut
okay.
up, Dad.
Right.
Leave me alone. What's wrong with you?
It's they're stuck. They're sitting.
Bendis.
Right. It's perfect for the message it is. And you go through those pages, boom, 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 boom. Same thing with a comic book. If you have a fight scene or if you have a traveling scene, if you you might have no words, or you might have lots of words with faces, and the art might not be action packed, but it is slowing down. It is speeding up. It is pacing. If you have someone speaking in big words, you have somebody speaking in quick, it's knowing when to apply it.
Yep.
Yes,
it must serve a purpose.
Yep.
That's the strength of working with full script rather than Marvel style, is that when you're drawing
Pay
the
attention
book.
to this, Roland.
Whoa! Did you guys read the? Did you guys read the comment from MT fan earlier? I think that was toward Aaron.
Yeah.
Unrelated note, Roland is looking.
Good
for
knowing you.
Good knowing you. That's true.
It's been fun.
And a completely unrelated note,
folks. Aaron's last night will. Good.
Right. We're all going to have to say goodbye to Aaron at the end of the broadcast.
At the end of this broadcast.
Bye, Aaron.
Well, Roland loves that Marvel style. I haven't worked with him yet, but he loves that stuff. So I'd be curious.
He does.
The trick with Marvel style is leaving enough room for the dialogue, for
Yeah.
the word balloons.
Yeah.
When you're working full script, you go, okay, he's got a lot of words in this one panel, so I'm gonna have to move. I'm gonna have to give him plenty of room for all that to fit in. Now, the problem with some artists is they just don't even pay any attention. They just go, okay, this is what I want to do in this panel. Well, no,
Right.
You got to leave room for the text. So this is not just a visual medium.
But it's my art.
It's words and pictures. It's both.
It's words and pictures.
I'm
You're right.
expressing myself.
Yes, indeed, indeed.
I looked
Every
up.
artist
Speaking of
tried
that,
to
Roy-
draw that famous G.I. Joe issue with Snake Eyes with his no words, right?
Oh,
Oh
Something
yeah.
bad.
Oh yeah. Well, you know,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
another thing Roland and I have gone around and around on. I'm like, dude, you know I can do a whole comic book with not one word and people still read it, right? Oh, I hate that. But you can. You don't need dialogue or description. You can do a totally visual comic book with no words.
And it's
at all.
really
film.
just
I think
satisfying.
about him convulsing by now. I think Roland's probably convulsing on the other end. Right now.
He is.
We said last
He
week
is.
you can the mark of a good movie, right? Is if you can turn Dean and Rob, you were both talking about
The
if you can
sound
turn
off.
the sound off. If
Well,
that
Yes.
one of my
Ever
most
seen a poster?
favorite movies recently is 1917, and
Oh,
that's
it's
a
so
lot
good.
of that's a lot of his face
Mm-hmm.
and his expressions. I love that movie. There's not a lot of dialogue. I mean, I love dialogue, and for
I haven't
storytelling,
seen that.
Rob, if you
1917.
Worth it.
1970, it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Okay.
It's top 10. I think Band of Brothers is my favorite war movie series.
Mm-hmm.
1917 is top 10 for me for war
Wow.
movies.
That's my
Absolutely.
grandfather's.
Intense, man.
That's my
Love-
grandfather's war.
Yeah, that my great grandfather. It's amazing, amazing. But it's not a lot of dialogue. Now I like dialogue in my storytelling. I think dialogue is a great way to get the story going without having to explain things. You can say one of my favorite examples. I think I've used this before. Hemingway used it. I'm kind of on Hemingway, but his economy of words is a great example for getting to the point. He describes the scene, and I should figure out which book it's from. I can't remember, but dude is shot. He's dead. The wife wants to go look, and the other guy says, "No, you don't need to see that." And that's enough to describe the whole scene, which you could have. He laid in a pool of blood, and it seeped in through his clothes. And no, with one line of dialogue, you can describe that whole scene. But then movie like 1917 or a comic book where the visuals can be awesome. Sometimes you don't need it. Sometimes with a facial expression or a movement or a gesture, you can tell so much. Again, if you can figure that out, you're going to tell a great story. That's the key.
Yeah.
I think-
Well, you know,
language.
yeah. Well, Shakespeare said, you know, brevity is the soul of wit.
It is.
And he
it
was
is.
correct. I like to use that in art too, as
Yeah.
the tip of the iceberg. Drawing the tip of the iceberg is better than drawing the entire iceberg.
Yeah, if
Because then the imagination completes the
Suggesting it. A lot of the action takes place in the gutters.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
In a comic book.
Speaking of the
A lot
gutters,
action takes place in the gutters. Yeah. I say the devil's
look
name.
who
and
just
up he
crawled
pops.
out of the gutter and joined us. Brent T. Ladies and gentlemen, the famous, the legendary writer of Kalis, everyone's favorite current book right now. I just read it was cool. Brent, welcome to the show, my friend. Good to have you. I did enjoy Kalis.
I read the first two. I haven't read that's next. I'm still working on the Christmas special with some of that. I'm a slow reader.
Yeah,
Like
I'm up there with Roland.
I'm not going to show you my pile of comic books.
Now, Brent
Yeah,
is a motion picture storyteller as well as Kalis.
Yes.
So he has to. And correct me if I'm wrong, Brent. You do a lot of shorter films, yes. So you've got to condense and get a lot of words in. Meaning, I mean, not a lot of words, but a lot of story in a short amount of time. And which is what we've been talking about: the time for flowery prose, the time for short to the point words, but also art, how an expression or a movement or a gesture can tell a story. Anyways, Dean, I didn't want to take over for you there. Sorry.
No, it's just that's fine. I just wanted to let you sort of fall down the stairs
and then we
watch it happen, and then just kind of pick up after. You know, Brent. So tell us a little bit about. I'm just messing with you, Scott. Tell us all about when you imply or loaded dialogue in terms of, you know, you don't have a lot of time in a screenplay. You know, you've got to kind of get the essence of things. You just don't have time to expound like Anne Rice in one of her novels talking about frilly collars and you know, Victorian wear and so on. But what do you
Victorian stuff?
Yeah, says the guy, exactly. So I don't write it though. I don't write like that.
Just draw it.
I try to encapsulate when I write. It's bad because I'm an artist. So I'm not really a professional writer. But what I try to do when I write is just really imply and hint rather than expand and expound on things. Like when you're writing for comics, you didn't have a lot of problem writing a lot for Kalis because there's a lot of stuff there. But when you write for, like, how does that change when you're writing for the screen versus writing for comics? How is that different for you?
Well, the main difference is that with film, you're writing. It is a collaborative effort to the point where you've got lots and lots and lots of people who are going to take what you're writing and run with it, which means that you could. A professional rule of thumb is you don't want to have a lot of description in there because then it looks like you're trying to tell the director and the production designer what to do. And those guys don't like being told what to do. On the other hand, you don't want to make the dialogue too long either, because then it looks like you're not trusting the actor to actually be able to convey emotion other than what you're saying. So you're kind of walking a line of, okay, make sure there's just enough description so that everyone who's creating the film knows what you're picturing, but also has enough leeway to interpret it their own artistic way. And that you're not, and there's other rules too, like when you're writing dialogue, you don't want to make it on the nose. You want to use a lot of subtext. You don't want to do a lot of exposition or barely any if you can get away with it. And you don't want to make the actor feel like they can't act, that they're just there to say your brilliant prose. So, yeah.
Well, one thing we talked about this earlier because we were discussing exaggeration and caricature, and I mentioned that in Shakespeare's plays, many of them, not all, many of them are so well written that they can transcend the setting and time period in which they were set originally and be done in our time simply because the dialogue and story are so strong. Hamlet being one that comes to mind immediately, Macbeth, Julius Caesar, Romeo and Juliet. But, when you look at that, there is a lot of open for interpretation, and yet some consider Shakespeare to be overly flowery and so on. I always thought once I got into the rhythm of reading his plays, the difficulty and the floweriness sort of fell away, and I got to the essence of what he was saying. Did you find that as well, or was it always a pain in the butt to read Shakespeare? Brent,
or all of us. I recently reread Macbeth, and I'm not practiced. I didn't have to hit it too hard in high school, and I'm sorry to say I'm not as versed in it as I'd like to be. But having said that, the fact that you have people not only reinterpreting his plays in a way that seems fresh and new, but you've literally got a company in Britain that's been around for how long that's been doing this and are turning out. This probably might offend a few people, but it's generally accepted that British actors are just better actors than American ones.
How dare you?
How dare
you?
Half of our American actors who are
Good night, everybody.
Yeah. And a lot of the credit has been considered to be because they grew up on Shakespeare. And so you can't deny it. Transformers sometimes seems more energetic than Hamlet. But we've already kind of moved into the whole, I can't believe I ever thought that was good. And but meanwhile, Shakespeare's, going on his third centennial. So
and the hits keep on coming.
Yeah, they do. They do
it's
indeed.
The classical music equivalent. What has staying power through the centuries. I know not everyone listens to classical music, but in the realm of listenable and playable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there are.
No, I can.
when you watch like British movies or British TV shows, you go. It seems like there's like 25 of them that are in Downton Abbey, The Crown.
Right. Same time period.
So they go,
or in James Bond.
Yeah. And then then they're in James Bond, and then they're in
right. Yeah,
it's a much smaller island. It's a little island.
The cool thing about it is that I discovered Shakespeare as a film fan in high school. We were required to watch Romeo and Juliet. I thought it was really, really cool because it was my first exposure to the language, but I caught on to it. I really liked it. The visuals helped sell it. And then in latter years, Kenneth Branagh's Henry V. If you haven't seen Henry V, oh my gosh,
Kenneth Branagh.
If that doesn't sell you on Shakespeare, man, that's just an awesome movie. But at any rate, the point of it, as it applies to this discussion, was very simply that good writing lasts and transcends its setting, and it really doesn't have to be so, shall we say, contemporary. It can be out of your head. Like, it can be poetic. If you want to be poetic in a comic book, that's what's so beautiful about the genre, is if you want to write something that's more poetic, go for it, because we're doing art, man. I mean, we're doing art. We got to remember that. It's like, I was influenced by the house style of Marvel. Yes. I was influenced by the house style of Image. Yes. But ultimately, in my mind, I'm doing art. It's not commerce to me. I mean, I know it's got to sell and all this other stuff, but I don't care. I've got a day job. I'm doing this because I want to do something beautiful and powerful, you know? So that's just me being upfront and out in the open with it. Aaron. Yeah. So
whatever.
Take that.
Whatever.
I'm still waiting.
No,
for
I mean, don't you feel that way though? Like, don't you feel like you're doing this because you have a passion for it? It's not, you're not doing it to get rich, right? I mean, if we all wanted to get rich, let's go be stockbrokers. I mean, come on, guys, you're not going to get rich in this business unless you're very lucky and you hit all three notes. You got to hit timing and talent and connections. Right?
Yeah.
And not all of us are going to have those three happen all at the same time.
Who you know?
So what?
I
don't have any of those.
Wait, say that.
We're screwed, man.
Can you say that again, Dean? I'm gonna
timing, talent, and connections. Yes. So, but I mean, it doesn't matter. It's like, you know what though? Ultimately, yeah. So you might get rich, you might not, but you're doing what you love, and that's what matters, guys. I mean, literally, do it because you love to do it. Don't get into this for any other reason, because if you're getting into it to get rich, good luck, right? Go pan for gold.
This ain't the
I love
this ain't the
that.
90s where people are buying 6 copies of each book.
Exactly.
Thinking they're going to put their kids through college.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you saying that Beanie Babies are worthless?
Oh my gosh! Look at that Furby. He's got a Furby.
Tickle me Elmo. Hey, I found the art style going way back to that early turn of the century. There was a style of illustration that they called the Brandywine School.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
right.
And that's just a quick list I found on Wikipedia. But NC Wyeth and Schoonover, is it Schoonover or Schoonover?
Schoonauer.
Schoonower.
Yeah,
I think very Dutch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I think that's right.
Love that style. I love that
Yeah.
style.
Beautiful
And,
stuff, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought if we when Steam Patriots gets to the trade phase, or we have a compilation, maybe do a cool cover in that style.
Absolutely.
Because there's
man.
Yeah, that I think NC Wyeth does a lot of the war art, but I could be wrong. But all those
He did a lot of, if I remember, Last of the Mohicans type of art as well, and also King Arthur and Robin Hood.
Yep.
So there's
love
some
that. I love it.
beautiful stuff there. Yeah. So, okay.
Treasure Island. He did Treasure Island.
Treasure Island.
Ooh.
Yes,
Classic,
he did that.
man.
Yeah.
Disney's too busy making Cars 5. And why don't they make Treasure Island? Darn it!
I don't know. Treasure.
Well, they
I
did.
don't know, man.
They did a TV
Yar.
John
They did
Silver,
it, yeah.
says I.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Hey,
That's where
they made
that's
the
where
Pirates
all
of
the
the
pirates
Caribbean.
going "Arr" came from.
Yar.
John Arkins.
All right. I know you got that down,
Thank
Scott.
you.
That's
I've been
pretty
working
good,
on that.
actually. All right. So, Aaron, tell us a little bit about the writing. Now, you write your stuff too. Like when you're writing your stories, like what is like when do you think, okay, this is what I want to say, and are you using the if I think it's cool, I'll do it, or are you thinking about your readership at all?
No, not really.
Why did I know
there was multiple questions?
I knew he was going to say that.
No,
But you needed the cigarette there. Like,
yeah,
yeah, I know. Well, the
No.
reason I say that is how many people read like are really into philosophy and stuff. So there is some, but a lot of the stuff I'm talking about, especially my Galilean series, is So if you write into your audience, when do you challenge your audience? Okay, so that's always the question. Like, where do you break the mold? I mean, you can do James Bond or whatever and write your generic James Bond story. But when do you challenge the audience to something different? I challenge them to not only see things differently, but think about things differently. This is kind of like what I've talked about before, and everybody can keep a scorecard with the anime Neon Genesis Evangelion. It's a giant robot anime in the vein of Ultraman, right? Then he starts talking about depression, clinical depression. Where did that come from? So he started challenging his audience to look at something different, and of course, the whole series blew up. It's like it's huge in Japan. They call it the Lord of the Rings of Japan. So I think there is a point where you write to your audience, but you also want to challenge them to think about things differently and look at it. If you stick to just writing to your audience and what you think your audience expects, you're going to stay in a rut. You have to break that sometime, and if you break that sometime, you have to figure out how you want to break it and how you want to do it.
The
And
customer is not always right.
It can crash and burn. Right, exactly. It can crash and burn. This is why when I watch Marvel movies, like, oh yeah, and like a lot of writings like that, it's like, yeah, they're great. Have I ever seen a Marvel movie? It's like, wow, I didn't think that would happen. No, because they're very, very safe. They're writing to the audience. But if they ever saw one that actually broke the audience tradition, that would amaze me. That would be one I would like and see. The Matrix did this. The Matrix, when they wrote the first movie, it was to the audience, good versus evil. The sort of bad guy, whatever. Nobody liked the sequels because they broke that trend. And then the second movies, they decided like there was no really good and evil. This kind of opinion. They started blurring the lines and gray toning the lines. People didn't like that. They put philosophy in it. They broke down the traditional hero story that people loved in the first one. I and a lot of other people really like it. This is why you like the sequels or don't like the sequels. But they challenged their audience. But they did it by telling the first one in a very generic, straightforward, good versus bad. It was the sequels that broke that down. And I thought that was important and very interesting and fascinating. But it alienated a lot of people. So you take a chance either way. Do I think The Matrix is a work of art? In that sense, yes. I think they are trying to say something about reality and about the way we live and about the world. I think that's the most important thing you can do about your art is write about how you perceive the world you live in, the universe, what you're in. And if you're not willing to challenge people to change your perspective, see something differently, then to me personally, what's the point of writing a story?
Well, that's a good point. And I think you can't, it's not to say, and I don't think you're saying this, but it's not to say that one cannot do thought-provoking within the bounds of the good and evil dynamic, but it's just how you approach that storytelling. It's interesting you bring that up because it looks like they're trying to really do that. Marvel is anyway with Moon Knight. If you've seen the trailer for it, they're really kind of turning it upside down and really trying to address mental illness for the character, which I'm dubious about its success still yet. I don't know how that's going to play. But in terms of, it is a new approach, and I'm willing to give a new approach a shot. I'm always willing to give it a shot. I'm not going to prejudge it before I watch it. So interesting coverage there. Rory, what about you, man? Give us your thoughts on, like, when you write, how much of it are you writing for you? How much are you writing for your audience? Do you do a little of both? Are you walking a tightrope? Are you drinking a beer? What's going on, man?
It's usually a whiskey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, a whiskey. All right.
Oh yeah.
I should know that.
Why did everybody multiply?
I find it.
There's so
quicker
many
and
of you.
Dean, Aaron,
He's like, is my
Aaron.
internet slowing down? No, that's just you.
Just you.
That's just you.
That's true.
Hit the one in the middle.
With the Monty Python.
I'm seeing double here.
Alpine
4
hikers,
crusties.
We're gonna climb both peaks of Mount Kilimanjaro. I think it's easier and quicker for me to write what I like and then adjust it later, knowing that there's other people that like the same things. Like Dean,
so you do adjust it. You do adjust it.
I do adjust it later, but
okay.
Only things that need to be adjusted. Nothing major. I write more for the aesthetic, and I feel like the story is secondary. The story moves along the aesthetic.
Okay. Expand on that a little bit for those who might have question marks.
So, like, I had you read that prologue and first chapter of that adventure novel that I'm working.
Yes.
Starts in a jungle, and you're in this group of people, and you're moving through it, and just the big motions. I want that Indiana Jones pulp adventure feel, which has a very specific feel and style to it. I want you immersed in that story and pulled through. And the storyline of where you go is more important than the dialogue and then the things that the smaller things that happen. There is a plot, there's a mission because there has to be, because that's what moves it along. But going from that place to place to place, I think is, for me, I just have this motion picture in my head of when I write, like, oh, this has got to happen next. Ooh, that would be cool. I want that to happen. And I end up with this timeline of cool things that I now have to stitch together or start tossing them out and using them for something else. So
yeah,
like
that's a good point. It's analogous to a challenge I faced in art class. I wrote a paper for art history class, and I got graded horribly because I basically said that you can write or draw art for art's sake and have it not do what Aaron suggested, right? Have it not challenge or not necessarily be provocative. It can simply be beautiful and evocative, right? Because a lot of the teachers and professors I had were like, oh, that's crap. We've seen that 1,000 times. And I always said, well, you're just a novelty fascist, right? You just want new or it's not any good, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, that's not true. You can be the best at doing a traditional thing and doing it great, right? I mean, you can ski, be the best downhill skier. You don't have to be the guy who does the upside down flips and the X Games. You can just be the best downhill skier. And that's still a level of excellence. It doesn't have to be new to be good. And I don't know if you guys, if any of you guys have faced that in college at all, or just in discussions where novelty fascists will just bang you over the head like, well, we've seen that 1,000 times. It's not new, so it's not any good. It's like, no, it doesn't mean it's not good. It just simply means it may be referencing something traditional. It may be echoing. It may be a tribute to something. I think the particular image I drew that drew this ire from my professor was the Lady of the Lake, right? Excalibur coming up out of the lake, right?
Yeah.
And all I got from him was, yeah, well, we've never seen that before. And I'm like, well, yeah, it was influenced by Howard Pyle. Okay. But I like that. I think it's cool. So what's wrong with that? And to me, that's where the novelty fascists come in. Oh, it's not new, so it sucks. So I don't know if Aaron's one of those people.
Water tarts.
Sure did sound like it, buddy.
Anybody says something. I mean, okay, let's say even I think you're kind of misdoing a little bit what I'm saying. I'm not saying you wrote Silverblade, right? What's the theme of that book?
The theme of the book is like on 3 levels. The first theme is what you think, good versus evil, right? The second theme is the concept of faith and the struggle with it in the face of no proof. The third level is, why does silver defeat evil creatures? So I'm
Right.
trying to address
So basically,
several things.
from right there, you were talking about your portrayal of what you see the world to be. Your perspective on the world, that thing I was talking about, that thing is coming through your book. Even if it's subtle, it's still there. And I think that's what drives stories. Like, so let me ask you the same question. What is the theme of the Eternals Marvel movie?
I didn't see it, so I don't want to pretend.
Okay, so like the newest Spider-Man movie. You guys have all seen that, right?
Nope.
Nope.
Oh, okay. Any Marvel movie.
Any Marvel movie.
How about the whole Marvel universe? The whole Marvel cinema, like, what is the theme?
Home without Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's
But I mean, when you see a Marvel movie, you don't come out of there going like, "Huh, I never thought of the world that way." Your story will. Come out of your story and be like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting take on Silver." That's a perspective shift. That's what I'm talking. I'm not talking like major things. I'm saying there should be a subtle reasoning behind the story. I mean, stories in essence are problem solving. That's what it is. If somebody has a problem, they solve it. Why they solved it, part of it, and that's a big part. Why would they do that? Why would they choose that? I mean, stories were originally told to each other around the campfire to pass information and to keep people from doing the same mistakes over and over again. So there's a part, most stories are told with morals, be like, oh, that way when everyone hears a story, they're like, killing is wrong. Good point. Thanks. Good. Right. That's the concept. So every story has that innate characteristic. So write the story. But even if you write the story and write the theme, your theme, I mean, even Roland says like his themes will come out. He will write the story, but you will see themes come out of it just because of his characters, the way they're written.
Right. And so what you're saying is, you're saying the novelty you're talking about is not a comprehensive novelty. You're talking in terms of a philosophical perspective can be new, a philosophical approach. Yes.
Well, every time I read a story from Brent, there's going to be a little bit of Brent in that story because Brent's writing it. That's his perspective. That's what's coming through. Whether you call it theme, story, whatever. It's the person in writing the story is going to have that perspective. Same thing with art. Art looks the way because it's the way you see the world. So I think
that's what makes it. I think that's what theme happens. That's what makes it compelling. I think to the viewer, to all of us, is if you're going through the motions to create something simply as a product, that's one thing, and that's okay if that's what you want to do. But if you're creating something where you want to share a part of yourself with the readers, to whatever degree, whether it's something very deep and dark like Mouse, or whether it's something more lighthearted, if you're sharing something about yourself and you're being honest and genuine about it, then it's going to connect, which means to me that's part of the definition of whether it's good or not. Scott mentioned earlier, what makes it good. To me, what makes it good is it genuine? Is the person, the creator, did he share something about himself and his perspective on the world with the story he's trying to tell?
Well, this is kind of like when it comes to, books and stories. I mean, if you think of the most important stories in the world, almost I guarantee majority of them, besides the Bible, is written by multiple people. Right. Written by one person. How many important stories do you know that are written by a committee?
Exactly.
Ones that you remember, ones that are important. Almost none. This is why the movies fail a little bit in that, because a lot of the Marvel movies, and just movies in general, a lot of written by committee. So they're taking what other actual artists did on their own, those themes, and putting them all together. Everybody's like, I got it because they've read this, and they mishmash them all together, and it comes off like half-assed, if you will. This is why every time you read something that's personally from somebody, it's much more powerful, it's easier to read, and means something because one person's in control of it. You don't have a bunch of guys running in the background, I want to put this stupid joke, I want to put this, and to distill it or water it down. It's like if I came to you and every time you did Silverblade, I kept saying, no, you need to change that. These are more jokes, Dean. We need more jokes.
No, I would just be like, what? No, I would just be like...
Okay, now let me do a little bit of devil's advocate.
Devil's advocate,
There,
go for it, man.
I think if you think about it, some of the ancient myths and stories of mythologies, those were essentially written by committee.
Over time, they're written
they're
by
told,
word of mouth. Yeah.
as they're told around the campfire, each storyteller changes it as it goes along. And the next story goes, that's a good piece, I'm going to keep that, but I'm going to add this in. So those were made by committee, I would say.
You would think it started out as source, but it's definitely made by more of a committee. I mean, the Bible's the same way. I mean, people
Yes,
like,
exactly.
are we even reading the original Bible? No, because how many times has it been transcribed by monks and whatnot? I mean, it's it's always going to be filtered through somebody's
not only that,
eyes.
many of the myths or many of the stories are actually borrowed from
from other religions and other myths,
religions and other societies. I would also throw another piece of devil's advocacy in there. I think when you're telling a story around the campfire, what you're trying to do is entertain. Period. You're not necessarily. You will at the same time pass along some information that people might need, but people are going to stand up and tell stories just to entertain the people they're standing in front of. They're not necessarily trying to pass along knowledge or something. And I think
it is to a degree, but I would also I would counter argue there is a point of entertainment, but there is a subconscious effort to enforce social norms.
Yeah, there is some of that.
If you tell a story about a criminal, you're not like, if I tell the story about a serial killer, I'm not telling you like after the story, everyone go out and start killing. You're telling the story about why that's bad. And even in myths, when you talk about myths, why, Odin did certain things or whatever, a lot of times there are certain things like, see how you messed up? See how that's bad? So a lot of stories I still think are enforcing or subtly enforcing social norms they practice. I mean, this is the beginning of civilization. Of course, the biggest thing that ties civilization together is communication, verbal language, what sets us apart from almost every other species. And because of stories, we can, instead of, it's easy. You try to tell somebody what to do, they're not going to do it. Put it in a story, make it entertaining, let them think about it. They're more accurately able to follow it. And so I do think there is stories can tie together societies and stuff and social norms. Yeah. To make each other laugh.
That's what I'm saying. To entertain.
To entertain, right. I think.
Oh yeah.
Entertain. Yeah.
Yeah, but still, even if you're telling a story to entertain and laugh, you're still drawing people together. I don't think at all. But again, it's like I mean, that goes a whole other realm as far as humor. But humor is basically we all go through the same thing. When you see a comedian, he's not going to tell. He's going to tell a story that we're all going through the same. That's what makes it funny because everyone can relate to that.
It's funny.
And again, that also is tying society together in a way because it makes you feel as part of the whole. So communication is one of those things that's the most important thing. That with lack of communication, society starts to fall apart. Especially disinformation, which of course you've been seeing on the internet, is also starting to tear apart the fringes of stuff society people acting out. That's a whole other topic, but
part of the problem with that is that people see patterns when there aren't any.
Yeah.
They're looking for patterns all the time. That's what we humans do.
We're programmed to do that.
Oh yeah,
we're programmed to do that, and unfortunately, there are bad people out there that take advantage of that.
Oh, exactly. I mean, it's ingrained. I mean, that's how we stayed alive in the jungle. I mean, you see black stripes in the grass. That's a tiger. That's pattern.
That's a tiger. Well, and in the earliest forms of writing, go to Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, trying to capture the nature of truth and discuss it and seek truth and beauty and define what truth and beauty are. So there's a part of that too, Aaron, that's not just enforcing social norms, but a quest for absolute truth, almost mathematical in terms of philosophy,
method,
right?
Yeah.
Right. So you like math is real because it's real. Like, you can have your truth that 4 + 4 = 9, but that's not going to fly a plane, right?
It's a different universe.
So, I mean, math
is
a reflection of truth, and
math is considered the universal language. Yeah.
Right. And so I think that exists in all of our quests of storytelling that are enduring, as we've discussed in previous shows, like things that last are things that matter to a lot of people. And a lot of people, I think, deep down, even if it's not all the time they're digging deep. I mean, sometimes we want to laugh, like what Roland said, but a lot of times, you know, the common thread here is the nature of what we're going through and how we survive it, and what makes us all survive and get along, and what makes life so simultaneously difficult and happy at times, you know? What's rewarding, what's satisfying, what makes society work, what makes it not work. You know, all these things we touch on, even in the most lighthearted Marvel movies, those things are touched on. But as you said, in the case of many of the Marvel movies, I think they're designed more to be popcorn entertainment and less probing of deeper thoughts, perhaps, which is not always bad. Yeah.
I mean, I'd go through an argument. I'd say they attempt to probe deeper thoughts. They just they miss their mark a lot. I mean, I can see
why you
very,
like
very
Zack Snyder.
blatant attempts at it. I'm like, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Here we go. Roland says, don't make storytelling too complicated. Tell a story. Make me cry. Make me laugh. I'm good. See, Roland's a simple man.
Exactly.
He's a simple man. He's like the Leonard Skinner song.
And because of who you are as a storyteller,
you know, make him cry, make him laugh,
to come out.
Entertain him. Right. He's in the cheap seats at the at the Globe Theater. Just make him laugh, make him cry. Well, see, you can, you know what, Roland, though, you can reach everybody in those. You can reach the cheap seats and you can reach the front seats. You can make people laugh, make people cry, and make them think deep thoughts too. You can do it all if you're good.
Yeah,
you know,
you can.
And that's what we're shooting for here at Silverline, dude. We're going to go beyond just make them laugh, make them cry, make them go, oh, that's cool. We're going to make them think, too. So, hey, you know.
Well, at least Aaron is.
Aaron's just going to piss him off, and that's, you know, that's the end of that.
Yeah.
So,
hey,
what do you say?
Figured out the word.
Skinnered, baby.
Yeah.
That's right.
I figured out the word I was looking for. And it is
what is it? What is it?
Way back when, halftones. That's the word I was. That's what I was.
Oh, halftones.
Sorry, that's not.
Wow, it only took
like
you an hour and a half, dude.
Oh, I got to give Dan credit. I texted Dan. I was like, Dan, what's the word? I just you guys were helpful. Yeah. So
yeah,
that's it.
Why they're called halftones, I don't get, because it's anywhere from 10 to 90%. So that's how's that half?
You take
right.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get that.
That's why I always called it Zipatone.
Wasn't Zipatone the actual name of the company, though? Was that?
Yeah, that's a brand.
Yes. Okay.
That's a brand. Yeah,
but it kind of, it's like Kleenex.
Or like Xerox. Remember
your Zipatoners with your Ben-Day.
Yeah. Your Ben-Day. Hey, that Ben-Day, man.
Ben-Day
my arm's much better now.
Ben-Day dots. Yes. Yeah.
You guys remember when you had to make a copy, but you just said, I got to go make a Xerox? I bet a lot of you folks don't remember that. But that's because Xerox made the only copiers at the time. But those of us in the South know of another similar quality when we say things like, I want to go get a Coke. Coke can mean Dr. Pepper, Sprite.
Where I grew up, that was prevalent.
Yeah, it's the same thing as you Yankees up north saying a soda. I want to go have a pop.
Pop.
We'll have a soda.
Western New York is soda. That's pop. Yeah. We say pop and portions of New York. I don't know why.
Pop. You guys, you crazy. Hey, what's the temperature up there? Just checking with you, Scott.
You know, it was over freezing today. It got up to 38, but then it's going to get down into the single digits for the weekend, like in the negative single digits over the weekend. I don't see there's a lot of snow in the forecast, just cold. Yeah, Rob said it's he's got the cold. His weather
56 degrees yesterday,
and then
tomorrow morning 5.
Yep. It'll be here.
No!
Yeah.
Cold.
It's
cold outside.
Yep.
Yeah, that is insane.
Roland says covering up.
Yeah. Roland says, "Yep, you can get them all. We can get them all. We can make you laugh, make you cry, and make you think. And that's what our goal is going to be." I wanted to, before we say goodnight, folks, I just want to say, is anybody else watching Book of Boba Fett in our pop culture segment here? Anybody? Anybody?
Not yet. I know it's out there.
Okay.
No
Okay.
Disney Plus here.
Yeah. Rory, what'd you think about the third one? What'd you think?
I've liked them all so far.
Okay.
A little slow sometimes, but
okay. All right. My problem was the sidekick support.
Mm-hmm.
Boba Fett doesn't need teenagers on hover bikes helping him out. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. Come on, it's Boba Fett, man. Boba Fett's like the man with no name. I mean, would Clint Eastwood need like 4 teenage sidekicks helping him out?
Dr. Jones.
You know. Oh gosh, no, I'm not going to go there. Oh my gosh, no, I didn't care for.
Movie.
No, I didn't care for that. But is anybody watching Wheel of Time?
Yes.
Anyone?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Slow.
Wheel of Time. Okay, I'm 2 in. Right, I'm two episodes in. How close is it to the book? Have you read the books?
You know what? I have not read the books. Amazingly, I never touched them.
I haven't either.
I'm going to just enjoy it as the show. I've gleaned a little bit of what some of the truists have said. No major complaints, differences, but they have adapted, of course, to fit the screen. I like it. I feel like I'm no editor of for film, but I feel like there's a lot that they could have just snipped and spliced, like scenes play out too long. Like sometimes I just, hey Cassisi,
it just shout out.
It just, I feel like pacing wise, and sometimes they just hold on to a thing for too long. And it does have
editing.
It does have a little of that angsty teenager, young adult theme with their interplay, and sometimes it's like enough of the you love him, he loves you, you loved him, he loved her.
Let's move on.
Let's
move on.
There's a reason I don't watch the CW.
I would recommend it as far as like the scope of the show, the sets, the number of extras. I mean, it's a big production, so it's enjoyable. I just feel like it could speed up just a little bit.
It could. Brent, any thoughts on either one of those, Boba Fett and or Wheel of Time?
Boba Fett seems a little slow, but I don't know. I don't feel like I've yet seen a Disney Plus show that really hit a huge home run yet. But they're fun, and I'll stick with them. Mm-hmm. I have not seen Wheel of Time. Have you guys seen did you guys see the Lord of the Rings name trailer drop?
The logo reveal.
What? Huh? What is this?
Yeah.
Talk to
me. Prime's doing that, aren't they?
Yes.
Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
Looks cool.
So what are they in a prequel to the books?
It's the Second Age, isn't it?
It's
Second Age.
Probably
which
when I got to pick some nerd brains. We're running out of time because I got lots of questions like about Lord of the Rings, like the rings and it must be Silmarillion stuff that I don't know. Maybe they'll reveal it in this TV show.
God, that's a hard read.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
Oh man, I tried reading Silmarillion,
and that's one that
that's tough.
When someone says, "Well, in the Silmarillion," I usually say, "Okay, enough."
There's no narrative. There's no threaded.
No. It's he's creating the world.
He's creating. It was his notes.
It's kind of like reading. It's kind of like reading the Egyptian Book of the Dead. If you've ever tried to read that.
Don't read from the book.
Not that one.
Someone tries to justify the Hobbit trilogy and the albino orc and his war. Technically, no.
Actually, no.
Yeah,
I love that
there's
stuff.
There's another series that needed a big editor on it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That should have been one movie. One movie.
Hey, Rankin Bass did it right. No one else needed to touch it.
Maybe two, but
maybe two. Yeah, good call, Rob.
There was two.
Good call.
But I did like some of the stuff that was added in. The whole story with the guy shooting the arrow at the dragon. That was not covered in the book, if I recall.
Not with those big arrow things. Bard had the bow, and he had a special arrow. You've always returned to me.
So I liked some of what was in it, but it needed to be edited down by at least an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, a little
So-
self-indulgent there.
Yeah.
They were. That was. It was indeed.
I'm-
So we don't
Dad,
want to
I-
be self-indulgent because we know
Too
when
late.
to say goodbye, don't we? Too late, huh? Nice one, Scott. I'll get you for that. But we appreciate everyone showing up tonight. We had a great discussion. It will continue. It will even invite Aaron back. So you just never know what's going to happen.
Everybody made good points.
They did. We always like to close with our common phrase, and I give everybody a chance to kind of grab their souvenir, and we like to say goodnight, everybody, by saying make mine Silverline.
My name is Ross Ritchie from Boom Studios, and make mine Silverline.